Thank you for coming tonight and welcome. Even though we're only going to be together for a short time, and it'll be about an hour and a half to an hour and 3/4 today, I'm going to do everything I can to make this time well invested for you. Regardless of whether your specialty is nutrition or herbology, I know you will leave our session today with information you can use with your clients. One thing I've learned over my years in the holistic wellness industry is that excellent healers keep learning. They know they don't know it all, so congratulations for being in that small minority who continue to learn, who strive to be your best, and who strive to give the best to your clients. I am so excited to have you with me. This is going to be a bit of an interactive session, and so I would love it if when I ask you to type something in or raise your hand, if you would just play all in and get into it. It'll help you to stay focused better, and it will help you to learn more. So for our very first thing, our very first poll, I need to find out from you, if you would please, what holistic training do you have? And okay, so you should be seeing a poll on your screen. And if you would just check off whichever of those applies to you, that would be great. Awesome. Super. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It just helps me to tailor make my presentation more to the audience, and that's a good thing. And one more quick poll just before we leave our polls for the moment. What is your biggest challenge? What is your biggest challenge in your holistic wellness business? And you only get to pick one here. What is your biggest challenge? I know that just takes a minute for the votes to get in and get tallied. So if you don't mind just clicking just the one. Lovely. Okay. Super. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Alrighty. So I'd like you to type in your chat box. I know there's a lot of stuff for you to do just as we're at the very beginning. What are one or two things that you would love to learn that you think would help you in your business? One or two things you would love to learn that would help you in your business. And it could be anything. It doesn't need to be necessarily related to what we're going to talk about tonight, which, as you know, is iridology as it connects to liver. But what would be something that you think that if you learned it, it would really help you? I mean, it might be iridology, it might be herbology, it might be nutrition, it might be bookkeeping, how to use something like QuickBooks. It might be how to market your business. It might be all kinds of things. So if you would type in the thing that you would like to learn that you think would help you the very most in your business. Just waiting for those lightning fingers to do their thing, and for the send buttons, and then for the messages to be transmitted to me. Sometimes it takes a minute or two. You know, I ask that question because so often when we do our holistic training, regardless of what field it's in, we are taught extremely tunnel vision, that thing only. We don't get the support in the other areas that we would like to have. Ah, Allison, good. Creating a website and bookkeeping, and you want to also do naturopathic medicine. Wow. You're going to be busy for a long time, Allison. Good for you. Good for you. All right. So there are ways to learn how to build a website. There are ways to learn how to do your bookkeeping, and or, as your business builds, to hire someone that, this is a bit off topic, someone who will help you with that. For example, I have an accountant. He does my taxes for year end, but I also have him do my month end. So I keep my records during the month and I do them on QuickBooks, which I share with him. And then he and his people take care of doing the month end stuff and my GST and making sure all the ducks are in a row so that when we get to year end, when we're doing the year end tax stuff, that everything is the way it's supposed to be and there's no stress. And I'll tell you, hiring him, I think it cost me about $75 a month to have him do stuff, and then $75 to have him do my GST. I'll tell you, the best stress relief I've ever had. I love having someone take care of that stuff because that's not my forte. So challenges, other challenges that you might be facing beyond how do you build a website and how do you do your bookkeeping might include some things that you're actually doing to yourself. Okay, so you know what? My computer just gave me a message that says my webcam is showing. Were you just looking at the inside of my office filing cabinet? I don't think this is actually showing anything that's useful, but put that there for just a second and let's see if okay. There we go. So if you can see me, great. I've got my webcam back up, my smiling face. We'll go with that. We'll get you out of the filing cabinet drawer. Challenges you might be facing. Let's get back on track here. Lengthy intake forms. Your clients don't like them. You gotta know that. You gotta know that. And I'm just coming back here. Okay, that is so bizarre that my webcam. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to unplug my webcam. If it's not going to cooperate with me, I don't want to play with it either. There we go. Okay, that stress is gone now. Sometimes it's just that easy, right? Just unplug it. Don't you wish you could do that with every stressor in your life? Just unplug it. Okay, so those lengthy intake forms, they ask a lot of questions. They're designed to be really broad. But the fact of the matter is that most of the questions on those forms are totally irrelevant to your client and your client's situation. Your clients don't like them. They're pretty much a waste of time. And I'm going to work with you today to show you a little bit about how you can use iridology as your intake form. The second thing is not knowing exactly where to start in your recommendations and in setting your therapeutic priorities. Again, when we do our studies, we learn nutrition, tunnel vision, that's what we learn. Or we learn herbology, tunnel vision, that's what we learn. We do case studies where we're given someone with a problem and we are expected to design this whole big detailed, the world is perfect, they've got Oprah's cook living with them type of system or program or protocol for them to use. And in reality, those kinds of programs don't work because they're so big, they're so all-encompassing that your client's not going to do them. And so rather than doing that to your client, we need to find a better way of working. The third thing that you might be doing is spending a lot of research and program development time outside of your paid time, and so you're not getting paid for it. So what that means is your client comes in, you see them the first time, you know what they need help with, but you don't know how to work from there. So you give them a little bit of something to start with to be working on now, and you go away and you do 2 or 3 or 4 extra hours of homework that you're not getting paid for, to research, to develop a program, so that when they come back, you've got something for them. Now that's a problem unless you're charging like $500 for that first session, because it means that the hours that you are not with your client, you are not being paid for. So let's pretend that you charge $100 for that first session and it's an hour long. So you're making $100 an hour, or so you think. But by the time you go off and do another 3 hours of research and program development, you have now reduced your income to $25 an hour, which is not a bad income, except that someone had to pay for all your training to get you to this point, right? Someone's got to pay all the bills that rack up while you're doing research. So it's not a great way to build a business. I don't know of any business that can succeed by giving away 2/3 to 3/4 of their time for free. In the process of doing all of this research, you've probably created a lovely report for your client. So the client comes in for that second appointment and you fire hose them with all of this information that's way more than they need, way more than they can absorb in one sitting. And they leave with one of two perspectives. The first is, I could never do everything she's told me to do. I'm a failure. I can't come back. And I know that because I used to do that to my clients, and I had someone that I ran into a few years later at a workshop tell me that's how she felt. Oops. Or the second one is that the client in that second session will grab one or two little nuggets out of this whole encyclopedia you've just written for them, and they'll think, good, I've got what I came for. That's all I need for the rest of my life. And off they run with that, never to come back. Neither of those is a good scenario. Neither of them really help your client, and neither of them really help you to build your business. The fifth scenario is you might feel a little intimidated by your clients. People do their own research online nowadays, and they come in to see us having been to Google, best friend Google, right? And they've printed off pages and pages and pages of information about what they think their problem is. Or if they've got a medical diagnosis, they print up pages of information about that because they know you probably don't know what they know. That can be really intimidating. And that intimidation that you feel shows. If you are timid, if you're feeling kind of like you're backed into a corner with this, it's not good for you, it's not good for your client, and it's not good for your business. You really want your client to have confidence in you right from the get-go. So how do I know all this? I know it because I have interviewed a lot of nutritionists, herbalists, and other holistic practitioners, and almost all of them have been there too. And I also know it because I've been there myself. I used to do the 1 hour appointment, the 3 or 4 hours of research, and come back prepared, but clients would never come back for a third appointment. Sometimes they wouldn't even come back for the second appointment. So yes, I learned things in doing that research, but it was research that was not necessary now, because the chances of having another person with that exact same problem come in later on was remote. So I've interviewed also a lot of clients, including some of my own, and they don't like these questionnaires. They don't like being rushed in and out of the office in less than 15 minutes. They really want to have some time with their practitioner. They want rapport. They want to feel heard. They want to feel understood. And so if you're struggling with any of those challenges today, I want you to stay with me to the very end, because we've got some great training to help you put those challenges to rest. So who am I and what qualifies me to share this amazing information with you? Well, my name is Judith Cobb, and I've been a holistic health coach since 1981. Now, for some of you might be just thinking that makes me old. Hopefully what it really makes you think is that I've got a lot of good experience under my belt, and I love to share what I know. I've been a master herbalist since '83, an NCP since '94, and in 2016 I took my nutrition credentials and joined another nutrition group to get my NNCP. I've been a certified iridologist since 1993 and a certified instructor of iridology since 2016. I have been teaching wellness professionals since 1985. Way back then, there were no classes like this. There was so little out there to teach holistic wellness to practitioners. I'm a wife of one, a mom of 7, and a grandma of 7, and in spite of how busy all of that stuff makes me, with the personal stuff and the business stuff, I still love teaching. It is still one of the things that just really gives me joy. So today I want to introduce you to iridology. It will save you time, it will save you frustration, it will save you from making some costly mistakes in your business, the kinds of mistakes that I've made in my business years ago. I love mentoring, and that's a huge part of why I teach. And we all make mistakes. As long as we learn from them, it's a good thing. But nothing in our training typically has taught us how to tie things together. Again, we learn nutrition and we learn only nutrition. We learn herbology and we learn only herbology. We learn iridology and we learn only iridology. I've taught practitioners who studied iridology 15, 20, 25 years ago and haven't used it since they learned it because no one taught them how to integrate it with their nutrition or their herbology, or how to tie all 3 of those together. And that's what I love doing, is helping people take what they know, add one more layer, and make it all useful. So today I am going to teach you something, share with you something that's not a new piece of technology, not necessarily equipment to buy. I'm going to teach you a new way of doing things to start eliminating those intake forms, except for the waiver release form. Every client you see should sign a waiver release form. I used to have my clients sign just one the very first time I ever met them, but recently I have added to that they sign a new release form every year they come in. And I do that because I add things. My release form gets modified. And one of the most recent things I've added is I've asked for permission, specific permission, to use their iridology photos when I teach classes and workshops. And so this is where a lot of our material and our visuals have come from for this class. We want to know how to start creating rapport from the moment you start the consultation, instead of starting with you looking down to read that awful intake form. You know, this eye contact is something we are losing. We are losing it so much with cell phones and things like that. We spend all of our time looking down. I've heard of people going on dates where they actually don't talk to each other. They text back and forth. Like, that's just wrong, in my opinion, just wrong. That's not how you build a relationship. And so we want to start the very beginning of every appointment with excellent eye contact, and we want to maintain that great eye contact, because that's how we know we are being heard, when someone is watching us while we're speaking. We want to extend that to our clients. That eye contact is so important. I'm going to teach you how to do a core assessment in less than 5 minutes, how to know the right questions to ask, how to prioritize what needs to be dealt with first, and create a therapeutic priority sequence for future consultations. And if that sounds too good to be true, I assure you it is not. It's how it really is when you understand how to use iridology. But first, what do you need to get started? Well, you need about $35 worth of equipment that you can buy at Target or Walmart or a stamp collection shop. Seriously, the only high-tech thing you need to know how to do is change a battery. All you need is a lighted magnifier like this one that you could get at a stamp collecting shop, or you could get a magnifying glass and a pen light. And I actually like to encourage my students to get all 3 of these for various reasons that we're going to look at as we go through. You want a 5x or a 8x or 10x magnifier, and a good little lighted magnifier as well. So I want to introduce you to the wonderful world of iris assessment, aka iridology. Today we're going to do 2 case studies. This is the first set of eyes that I'm going to walk you through in just a few minutes. If you already know something about iridology, you may know that there are also fancy, expensive cameras that take photos like these. And yes, I've got one. And yes, I use it on every client who comes in. But it's not where I started, and it's not where any of us started. I don't want any of you thinking that in order to do iridology well, you have to go and spend $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 on a camera. You don't. Just start with the basic setup. When you know what to look for in someone's eyes, you begin to understand their health story and a bit about their personality. With iridology, you will never diagnose and you will never prescribe, but you will assess and you will educate. You will understand what specific questions to ask to get the deeper kinds of information you need to get from your client so that you can better help your client to have improved health. And that's what we all want as practitioners, right? We are all in this because we want to see people achieve wonderful, tremendous positive changes in their health and in their lives. So the irides, and that is spelled I-R-I-D-E-S, is the correct plural when we are talking about eyeballs. The irides are genetic indicators. That doesn't mean they can't change or that they don't change. It does mean the changes you'll see over time in someone's irides are almost completely genetically programmed. Just like your hair color changing with age is genetically programmed, your eyes will have things come up as a part of genetic programming. You can control it somewhat with diet and supplements, just like you can control if you are going to go gray earlier or a bit later by using the right supplements. The same is true of your irides. Now, I know this because I've been in the industry for over 35 years, and I've had photos taken of my eyes way back at the very beginning, and I've got photos from just a few months ago. And with the thousands upon thousands of dollars of herbs and vitamins I've swallowed over those 35 years, and with the high quality diet I strive to maintain, and with my active lifestyle that keeps my body fit and strong, I've not seen any of the markings disappear, especially in the fiber structure. But I have seen a few, particularly pigments, we're going to talk about pigments a bit today, pop up in my eyes. We don't do this work to change the eye color. We do this work to improve health. The irides show us how the body is genetically put together. Dynamic iridology is what we are going to be talking about tonight. It includes the study of the iris and the study of the sclera. And we are going to touch a little bit on sclera tonight, as well as a lot on iridology. So when you start a consultation, what is the information you get from your client very first thing? I'd like you to type that into your chat box. What is the very first thing you want to ask your client? And there's no right or wrong answer here. I'm just wanting to see what your thought processes are like. And while you do that, I am going to get a sip of water. Okay. One or two things that you like to get from your client the very first time you meet them. Lightning fingers and all that good stuff going on. Okay, let's see if anything's come in yet. Age, weight, what meds are you on? Is there something I can help you with? Brilliant, absolutely. Well done. You've had a good teacher, Allison. So absolutely, you want to know their gender, their age, their height, their weight. Even knowing that basic information, you can start sifting through what you know. If you have a female who is age 35 coming in and she's 5 feet tall and she weighs 200 pounds, you instantly know that you are working with some kind of an endocrine issue, whether it's one that she was born with or whether it's one that she has earned. It's all good information because it begins helping you distill down what you need to know. Thank you, Allison. Of course, I was teasing when I said that, but thank you for the compliment. And the question of what problems do they want your help with? Absolutely. How can I help you today? I am careful how I word things because sometimes, and it's not a bad thing, sometimes you get clients that are kind of smarty pants. So if you say, and what brings you in today? Well, my car brought me in, right? And so I try to keep a little bit narrow at the outset when I'm getting to know them a bit. So what do they need my help with? And what medical diagnoses and prescriptions do they currently have? Now, this is interesting and important because you want to know this. You want to know if they've been to the doctor for these problems. You need to write down their doctor's name. You need to write down the names of their prescriptions. You need to also have a drug reference book to look up those medications so that you can make sure that any recommendations you make are not going to be in conflict. So that is so important. Unless you are a licensed medical professional, it is crucial for you to ask if they've seen a doctor for any of their issues that they want your help with. And again, write that doctor's name in their file. It just adds a layer of protection for you. And in this day and age, it's very sad, but we do need to protect ourselves like that. When you understand the iris and the SLAIR, you can integrate all of your nutrition knowledge and your herbal knowledge and your lifestyle knowledge. You can prioritize which pieces of education and homework to share with your clients today and in the next session and the session after that. And you can easily create bite-sized, doable pieces of homework for your clients. Integrating iridology, nutrition, and/or herbology and lifestyle into your sessions will help you to eliminate your lengthy intake forms. Really, the intake form, quote unquote, that my clients fill out is name and contact information and permission to use their photos. Everything else I want to know from them, I am going to ask them face to face. I'll ask them when their birth date is. I'll ask them how tall they are, how much they weigh, what problems they would like my help with, all those kinds of things, but those are a part of the conversation. Knowing how to do iridology with everything else also helps you to know which problems to address first and what the best recommendations are. It significantly reduces and hopefully eliminates doing research and program design outside of client time. It will help you to stop overwhelming your clients with too much info while encouraging them to become long-term repeat clients. And as we do the two cases today, you'll see how succinct and how precise the homework is that I gave my clients, and the amount of information that I gave also very, very precise, so that they leave knowing what they know, having that new information, and they know exactly what they're going to be working on. Very quantified, very measurable, so they can feel successful when they come back. And last but not least, look incredibly smart, even more than you already do, as you ask client-specific questions and create programs right in your sessions. So you're saving time, working much more precisely. So how long is my intake form? It really is just the one page. I have 2 more pages of questions that if I decide I want to ask them or I want to be selective, I've got that in there to remind me. It's just a mind jog, but 9 times out of 10, most of those 2 pages are left blank because they are not relevant to what my client's needs are at that particular point in time. So my client actually answers no health questions, no history questions on paper, none whatsoever. Let's log into our case study. Let me introduce you to Jane. Yes, we've changed the name. I promised her when I would use her photos, I would not use her name. But all of the facts are true. Notice first that there is a slightly different coloration here. Also notice that this photo has 2 flashes. This only has 1. You'll see other light artifacts in here, and this is really interesting because she has lens implants. So sometimes when you're working with someone who has the lens implants, you will actually get a reflection off that lens as well as off the surface of the eye. So Allison is asking, do I always have an intake form that short? Yeah. No, I did not always. I used to make my clients fill out like 3 pages of questions. And then I stopped making them fill it out, and then I went to asking them the questions. But it was all very structured and not very free form. And I found that it was no different whether I asked the questions or whether they just read them on the paper. When it was so rote and so pre-programmed, it didn't give me what I needed to know. And so ditching that whole idea of I have to ask these questions has been such a blessing. I do ask if they're on medications, and I do ask if they've had any specific diagnoses. Other than that, and age and so birth date, height, and weight. Other than that, everything I ask them is starting from what I see in their eyes and from what they've told me they want my help with. So I'm starting right from ground zero and building the case as I'm with them. So back to Jane here. We've got this one eye that looks darker, and it's only darker because it has less flash in it than this eye has. So less light means it's a darker image. So it's not that she has 2 radically different eye colors, although that is possible. Jane is 45 years old. She weighs about 145 pounds, and she's 5 feet 6 inches tall. She's gained 10 pounds over the past 10 years, and she is not happy about that. And especially because she has a history of disordered eating. She feels it's under control at the moment, although it sometimes shows up not as binging and purging or as anorexia, but it sometimes shows up with her as working out too much. So we need to watch her on that one. Her life is crazy busy. She's got 2 sons who are teenagers who attend an elite sports school. So much of her time is spent driving kids to various extra practices, to games, to tournaments, and to special training sessions. She feels that with all of this, her life is very high stress. She sleeps through the night, and she works out for at least an hour every day, and her energy totally drops at 3 o'clock. 3 in the afternoon, she is done. She needs a rest. She needs something to eat. She has very dark circles under her eyes. It looks like she's been in a fist fight or like she hasn't slept in years. She wants her energy back, and she wants to lose that 10 or 15 pounds. So the first thing we notice, of course, is that the eye colors are different, and they're not really different. That's just a difference in photography. The other thing we need to know about photography is that it is very inaccurate for color reproduction. So when we take photos, we can't use that as the absolute, this is what color the eyes are. We use that as a general guideline, and because we've had our client face-to-face, we can look directly in their eyes and see what colors they really are, compare the real eyes to the photos if we're working from photos, and work from there. Jane's eyes are brownish with lighter golden areas, and so this falls into a category that we call biliary. As the name implies, the liver is her main focus for her all of her health. Because she's biliary, I want to know anything that might be impacting her liver, and I'm going to ask those kinds of questions. So I started with asking her if she knows of anything that's not quite right with her liver, or if there's a family history of anything like that. That's a really broad question, and for a lot of people the answer is, I don't know. That's okay. So I turned that around and I asked her, do you drink coffee? Yep, 1 to 2 cups a day. Do you drink alcohol? Yep, at least 1 glass of wine every night when I'm home. Now, she's out a lot in the evenings chauffeuring her kids, but she's having 3 or 4 glasses of wine a week, which normally I would go, big hairy deal, but because she is so liver, she's definitely biliary, I'm going to have a different opinion about having a glass of wine 3 or 4 times a week. So then we are going to look at the pupil's edge. We look at the pupil, and we notice that her pupils are not round. So I asked her if she knew of any reason why her pupils would not be round. Again, a really broad question that to a lot of people would be a big, how, what? But she suggested that she'd had these lenses implanted, she'd had laser surgery on her eyes, maybe that has made them not round. And we do know that cataract surgery with the requisite lens implants can actually alter the shape of the pupil. There was a study done in 2013 where they measured the pupil width and height 3 months before surgery and 3 months after surgery. And it was noted that after surgery, the pupils got smaller, which is most interesting. They generally got smaller. There was no mention in this report of the surgery creating flattened zones like we see in these irides. So I asked a different question. I asked her if she had any problems with her spine, because of course, as we know, as we learn with iridology, the shape of the pupil has an awful lot to do with the alignment of the spine. So in Jane's case, I asked her about her mid-back primarily, and she commented that she sees a chiropractor regularly for back fatigue. The pupils can become round again when the right spinal care and proper core strengthening have been done for the long term. So I suggested she do Dorn as a spinal alignment and that she get massage regularly. And that was where we were going to work with that. And that was an easy thing to do because she likes doing self-care as well. Oh, apparently I missed forwarding a few. There we go. Then we look at the edge of the iris and where it meets the pupil. And what we see here is that it's not smooth. We call this a comb teeth border. It suggests that there is a very high risk that her stomach does not produce acid very well. And often this lack of acid production will lead to gas, to gut pain, to constipation, and to diarrhea or heartburn, just various things like that. So I asked her, are there any proteins that cause you digestive problems? And her answer was yes, chicken makes her gassy. Huh. That was interesting. People often say beef or pork, but they rarely say chicken. So this was interesting. And so I started thinking in my head, what would I do to help her with her digestion at that level? Then I looked at her collarette. So I haven't actually made really any suggestion to her so far except for the Dorn. That's really the only thing, Dorn and a bit of massage. Haven't made any other suggestions. I'm still gathering information. So now I'm looking at the collarette, which is this ring that comes around here. It's roughly concentric with the pupil and with the limbus, or the outer edge of the iris, and it's in both eyes. So James is a little bit close to the pupil. We consider that that this is a reflection of how the intestinal tract is programmed. And in this case, it suggests that her small and large intestines are a little bit constricted. This can lead to gut symptoms like deer pellet bowel movements, long thin bowel movements, gut cramps. So I asked her about her bowel habits. Now this tight collarette also suggests that she's a bit of a private person, that she doesn't like large crowds of strangers, and she prefers being in smaller, more intimate groups of people that she knows. That's good to know when you're working with someone, to know what their preferences are. We also have this tight collarette that suggests that she burns her fuel a little too quickly. And so because of that, she may not be able to store it very well. That could be a part of what's leading to her 3 p.m. crash. Add this to the fact that we know that the liver stores glycogen Remember, Jane is a biliary type, and so that means that if the liver's not storing glycogen very well, and if she just doesn't generally store energy, and if she's not digesting her proteins well, there's a really good chance that we've got some liver involvement in all of this. So we now have two markers pointing to why Jane's energy runs out in the afternoon. The first is the tight collarette, and the second is that she's got all this brown in her eye. She's the biliary eye type, and so that speaks about her liver. Then we notice that as we come out from that ring, there's a little band that's just a little bit more brown than everything else. It shows up really well in this eye, where we've got this dark brown band, and then it's a little more golden out here. We call this the central heterochromia. This is one type of central heterochromia. Now, again, the brown anywhere in the eye tells us how the liver wants to run the show and what kind of an impact it wants to have on the body. Specifically because of where this central heterochromia is, it's telling us that the liver wants to get in the way of how nutrients are transported throughout the body. That's not a good idea. Not a good idea. So we maybe need to find a way to help the liver do its job better. Even further out, we see these creases. These creases are called contraction furrows. So the iris is made up of layers of thready tissue. The threads start at the outer edge. They come in to the collarette, do a hairpin turn, and go back to the edge. From the center, they start at the inner edge, come to the collarette, do a hairpin turn, and go back to that edge again. When the pupil expands, it forces these threads to crinkle up. When the pupil contracts, the threads get stretched out their full length again. When the pupil has spent a lot of time expanded, the threads develop permanent creases or contraction furrows. This begins before you are born. I have iridology photos of children who are under the age of 2 that have the most amazing sets of contraction furrows you've ever seen. And this has to do with knowing a bit about the family history, that the pregnancy was very emotionally difficult, that there was a chance that the relationship between the mom and the dad was going to dissolve, and the amount of stress that put on this mom was huge. Of course, baby felt all of that stress. When we have this pupil spending a lot of time expanded and the threads develop these permanent creases, we know that this person is functioning under the influence of the sympathetic nervous system, because the sympathetic system dilates the pupil. Jane's got a lovely set of contraction furrows, and yes, she spends a lot of time revved up in her sympathetic nervous system. This sympathetic overdose could lead to elevated cholesterol, which can result in weight gain over time, and will also likely lead to a miserable menopause. People who have contraction furrows typically are go-getters, list makers, get the job done kinds of people. They often take on more than they should, and they end up exhausting themselves. Oops. So in this slide, can you see the dark brown patches that are here? Dark brown patches. Yeah? Brown always means liver. And it's not that there's necessarily anything specifically wrong with the liver right now, just that there's an increased predisposition to the liver going out of balance. So the liver does over 500 different things that we know. And if it goes out of balance, lots of other things are going to be impacted. Now, I want you to hold that thought for just a moment as we look at an iris analysis chart. The irides have maps just like there are maps of the feet for reflexology. This is an excellent beginner's map. It's developed by a good friend of mine, Bill Caradonna. This is the map I supply to all of my students when we start our course together. I want you to note where the liver reaction zones are sitting in this setup, in this chart. So in the right eye, we've got from 7:30 till 8, and again from 3:45 till just after 4. In the left eye, we've got from about 7:45 to about 8:15, 8:20. So if we go back to this set of eyes, this is a right eye. So it's like we're looking at her face. Her nose is here. You're sitting across the table from her. This is her right eye. This is sitting exactly in this liver reaction field. So let's talk about what this means for just a moment. We have a little collection of pigment sitting in a liver reaction zone. So it's a liver reaction zone that is showing something in it. And that something happens to be brown, which means it is the liver color. This actually then counts as 2 iris signs. We have a mark in a liver zone, and that mark is a liver color. So we know we really want to pay attention to the liver. The rest of these things do suggest liver, but to a lesser extent. And they show us liver involvement in other ways. This shows us that liver potentially has some issues that we need to be aware of. Now, you've likely noticed these 2 dark spots at the top of each eye, and it's curious that they are equidistant apart. If we measured this, they are so close to being exactly the same distance apart, one eye to the other. This is the result of laser surgery. This is damage to the iris from laser. Okay, so just so you know, we don't even read those. That's something we have no control over. We can't have an impact on it. It's done. So when we're talking about liver, what kinds of things do you like to recommend for liver support? What's something that you would suggest based on your nutrition or herbal knowledge for someone where you detected that the liver needed some support? And I'll give you that minute to do the lightning fingers thing so we can get some input from you. What do you recommend for liver support? Typity type, type, typity type, type. There's so many things that we can do nutritionally, that we can do with diet, with herbs, with supplements of different kinds. There's so much. The liver is so important. I mean, really, it's the only organ that you have that can regenerate itself if a part of it gets cut off, right? Which is just mind-boggling. You can't do that with an ear or a finger or your nose or your stomach or even your heart, but the liver you can. I've always wondered why that is. Why it's the only organ that can regenerate itself. Okay, so Allison, if you're typing something, if you would just raise your hand so that I know to wait. You are typing. Yes, good, thank you. Appreciate that. And I know, but by the time you type it and you click send, it can sometimes take a minute to come over the internet. We're so used to instant gratification with the internet. There we go, good job. Liver herbs such as burdock, dandelion, excellent choices. Yeah. Drinking lemon and warm water, yeah. Cutting back on coffee, sugar, and processed foods. Excellent. Those are all excellent suggestions. And you're going to see that that is exactly the direction that I was taking her as well. Because my favorite dietary add-in is, kind of falls into the burdock dandelion area, is the leafy greens. So I made the note in her file that we needed to talk about increasing her leafy greens. But to this point in our consultation, I haven't actually told her anything. I've given her no recommendations yet because I want to gather as much information as I can before I start talking about what I would like her to consider for homework. Last but not least, we're going to talk about this milky film that's at the upper edge and the lower edge of her irides. This is one of the strongest indicators that the liver has not been happy in this person's lifetime. This is called a lipemic diathesis, and it's primarily an acquired sign, meaning you have to earn the right to have it. It's a strong indicator of liver enzyme imbalance and a diet that is high in foods that can unbalance the cholesterols and triglycerides. In about 50% of the cases, it also correlates to arterial congestion due to plaque buildup. It's interesting to note, though, that people can block arteries without having elevated cholesterol. How this sign develops in the eye is this. The liver starts messing up on how it creates and balances cholesterol and triglycerides. That creates fats that are maybe a little bit different than the fats it's supposed to make. And these fats are just slightly different enough that they can be absorbed into the cornea. When these fats are checked, when we do blood tests for cholesterol and triglycerides, things often won't look like they're out of balance at all. But something has been seeping into the cornea, and once the cornea has absorbed them, it's not going to give them up. These parts of the cornea will remain milky white as a reminder that we need to continually watch this person's liver and her blood chemistry. So when I see this, I always suggest eliminating things that irritate the liver, and you've hit on most of these beautifully. Coffee, alcohol, and refined carbs are some of the biggest liver irritants we have. I've done a lot of teaching in this session already. There are other markers in this set of eyes that speak of circulatory insufficiency, circulatory congestion, allergies even, and the likelihood that there is an infection of some sort that has been long-standing, that there's maybe even a yeast infection or a fermentation problem, and there's so much more. These eyes have got so many stories to tell us. We simply can't address everything in one client session, nor should we even try. We need to choose a starting point, preferably one that will have some impact on everything else, and certainly one that will have an impact on why the client came in to see us. So as you can see, I've done an awful lot of chattering so far, but if I had just been able to go through and list all of the things that I saw in the eye, it would have taken less than 5 minutes, and that would have been my initial analysis. So the recommendations I would make for this client in her first appointment are to reduce the coffee. I know her, I got to know her fairly well and in our time together, and I knew that taking all of her coffee away instantly wasn't going to fly. So I suggested that she limit herself to 1 cup a day and that she choose 2 days a week to go coffee free. So she would still have 5 cups a week, but that would be cutting it down from about 10. So that was very doable for her. She could approach that. I asked her to start including 3 ounces of leafy green salad every day. Now that's a large bowl of salad heaped high. She's busy. She may not always have time to sit and chew on salad. It takes time to eat salad. So I suggested that if it was a rushed evening, that she could take the salad, throw in a little bit of leftover chicken, a bit of ranch dressing, and then roll this all up in a wrap. And because the salad will compact beautifully into a wrap, and eat it while she's on the go if she needed to. And that the salad that's in there is so good for her liver. I also suggested that it would be really good for her to take 30 minutes of relaxed time every day. Now, whether that looks like a warm bath before bed, or a gentle walk, or taking time to read a book or listen to music, I was just asking her to slow down for a short period. Now, this is tough for someone who lives in the sympathetic mode. Really tough. But that constant go, go, go of the sympathetic personality is hard on every organ, including the liver. She was willing to consider using supplements, so I chose an adrenal glandular substance because I suspected with what she was telling me and the way her pupils look in natural light as opposed to with bright flashes, with all of these contraction furrows, and with the dark circles under her eyes, I was pretty sure her adrenals were pretty spent, pretty tired. I also added a methylated B complex because it's great for the adrenals, and the methylated Bs are also good for the liver. When the liver is tired, the person is tired. When the adrenals are tired, the person is tired. So by supporting both the liver and the adrenals, we begin to turn the energy around fairly quickly. So the whole idea with the supplements or with the recommendations that we've made here is to keep them simple, to keep them underwhelming, and to keep them doable. We needed to keep the program really focused because it would increase her chance of being compliant, and that will give her better results, and that's a good thing. So if you would like to learn more about how to read blue eyes or green eyes or light brown eyes or dark brown eyes, or if you know someone else who would, we have got a new class starting. Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology starts on October 5th. So registration is now open, and this is just like 2 weeks away, so it's coming up quickly. Here's what you will learn. You'll learn how to do a base assessment in 5 minutes or less without lengthy intake paperwork. And that means, let's back that up one, that means that you'll save time. You'll have more time to see more clients if you want, or to pursue other interests. You'll be able to get your office work done, your client work done while you're with them, and have more time left over for yourself, your family, your friends, whatever is important to you. You will learn how to ask questions that are relevant to your client's needs. People like working with someone where they feel like they've got a rapport. And the more spot on your questions are, the more your client is going to feel rapport. As they feel that rapport building, they will know you, like you, and trust you. And that also will do two things. It'll make them want to come back, and it'll make them want to talk about you. I hear this a lot when I'm with a client for the very first time, and I'm developing that rapport. They'll go, "Oh, my sister would love you. I'm going to tell my sister all about you." And the sister will book an appointment in. I was out for meeting someone a couple of months ago. It was a nutritionist that I'd met online, and she was from Calgary. I like to meet people face to face, so I suggested we meet at a Starbucks or wherever to have a cup of herb tea. So as we're sitting there and she was interested in iridology, I just leaned forward and I said, "Would you like to know something that I can see in your eyes, that your eyes tell me about you right now?" She said, "Of course I would." I didn't even have my lighted magnifier. I was just looking at her across one of those little deli kind of bistro tables, the high up ones. And I looked for a moment, and then I sat back and I told her a couple of things, and she went, "Wow, you saw that? I'm going to call you." So that was very cool, right? Because we created that rapport. She could see that I could see what we needed to work on. When you've got all this together, you learn how to prioritize the problems that your client needs help with. And that's great because it means that you get it right the first time. Your clients are impressed with that. They want to come back. This helps you to connect what you already know about nutrition or herbology to what you discover using iridology. And again, when you know that, you can then select the 2 or 3 key pieces of actionable and doable homework for your client, give them a short list of things that they can be successful with, and help them be very successful. And when the time is right, you'll be able to do a much deeper analysis to work on very deep things with them as needed. We will be covering in the class beginning to intermediate iridology and sclerology at a level that will prepare you for the IPA certification exam if you choose. IPA does charge a separate fee for that. And we'll also be teaching you how to connect your nutrition and your herbology to iridology. So just to be clear, I'm not teaching nutrition, I'm not teaching herbology. You need to come in with that. But it certainly does a great job of tying things together. A student who has recently completed the course and is working on her exams sent me this. She said, "We are 7 weeks in and I can officially call myself an iridologist in training. I can now write an assessment and read many eyes with confidence. The amount of learning is enormous and there's a lot of depth to this course. Judith's teaching is professional and easy to learn as she stops for questions, has great slides and reviews every week. Her students are her priority and their understanding of the information is imperative to her. I would definitely recommend this course to anyone who's even thinking of taking an iridology course. Judith is a wealth of knowledge and a fantastic mentor. I love this course, and I know you will too." Excellent. Let's do another case study. Notice how these eyes are different from the previous set of eyes we analyzed. These eyes are blue. Now, your computer monitor may show them to be a dark, dirty blue, or a steel blue, or a green blue. Computer monitors are like photography. They're inaccurate for color reproduction. I typically teach using two different computers at the same time, and it's very, very different. One is a much bluer screen, the other is a much grayer screen. Now, that quote I just read, for any who are listening to the recording of this, was by Allison Taylor. She's with me tonight, and it touches my heart. But she says, "And I stand by that now as I did then." Thank you, Allison. That means an awful lot to me to hear from my students, things like that. I will regain my composure and I will continue with the teaching. So these eyes are blue. We call them lymphatic. And yes, I'll show you an indication in a few minutes of that this person's lymphatic system could also be a source of trouble if she doesn't watch out for it. This is Jill. She's a 57-year-old female, 5 feet 5 inches tall and 130 pounds. She's very active and enjoys training for triathlons and half marathons. She's got a lot of children, most of whom are grown and out on their own, and she is happily married. Her job is very sedentary, so on most days that she's not training for a triathlon, she tries to go out for walks of 30 to 60 minutes. She's a non-smoker. She was diagnosed with a hereditary liver disorder when she was a child. It's called Gilbert's syndrome. And so to keep her bilirubin under control, she has to eat every 3 to 4 hours, and it doesn't need to be a lot. And she needs to get out into the sunshine frequently. Her parents and grandparents have really stressful histories. There's heart disease in the family, obesity, arthritis, and dementia. Her main goal is to retain her health and to avoid the health problems that her parents and grandparents have had. Her diet's pretty good. She doesn't drink alcohol, coffee, or tea. She eats a dinner plate-sized salad at least 3 times per week, and along with other vegetables on a daily basis. She strives to get a variety of protein over 3 or 4 times a day, so a little bit 3 or 4 times a day. And she does enjoy chocolate. Yep, she's not quite perfect. And she loves homemade pudding, but she makes it with coconut milk and coconut sugar. All right, so we start with her base color. And her base color is blue, which means she is lymphatic. That means she's got an increased risk of elevated acid, an increased risk of asthma, allergies, arthritis, kidney issues, and skin issues, none of which she wants to have. She has other colors in her eyes, the bright orange and the rust colors as well. And the bright orange suggests that her pancreas likes to go out of balance. The rust and brown, as we learned on the previous case, and she's got lots of this in her eyes, suggest that her liver wants to have some issues. Now again, she's got Gilbert's syndrome. So I know that you already know that the liver and the pancreas are supposed to play nicely together. They both play auxiliary roles in digestion and blood sugar balance, and if one of them is not happy, it kind of nudges the other one to be unhappy. These two really go into cahoots together. Let's start again at the center at the pupil. Notice that her pupils are not round. Oops, jumped ahead too fast. Her pupils are not round. And her pupil shape suggests that her upper back and her neck don't hold alignments well. So I asked her if she had any indication that her spine had some issues, and she said yes. She was in several rear-ender car accidents many years ago. She sustained several whiplashes from those and a couple of significant concussions. She tried chiro for a couple of years along with massage, did not do a blessed thing for her, so she gave up on it and was basically just suffering in silence. I suggested that she should use a Doran practitioner and do some regular massage, like at least once a month, more if she could afford it, and that she work on core strengthening. She likes to do the triathlon and half marathon training kinds of stuff, but that doesn't involve as much core as what we need. If any part of the back likes to go out of balance, other parts will go out of balance to compensate. So we need to keep the core strong to hold the spine in alignment to keep things the way they're supposed to be. So she's found that, Jane has found that it really does help her to do the Doran, the massage, and the core strengthening. It helps to reduce her headaches, her neck pain, and her upper back tension. Now I'm going to finish this analysis off a little more free form, a little less structure to it, so that you can get a feeling more for the thought processes that go on with a little less structure and an outline here. So I always start at the center, and what we see is it looks like she's got the comb teeth that we learned about in the previous case. So that tells me the stomach lining is probably not as tough and strong as we'd like it to be. She may not digest her proteins very well. So I asked her about burping, about flatulence, about proteins that don't sit straight. And she hasn't noticed any particular problems, but what she has noticed is that her fingernails are lousy. They chip, they crack, she can't grow them out. They've got lots of longitudinal ridges, which is another indication of poor protein assimilation. Interesting. Then I look right next to that ring, that comb teeth ring, and I see that we have this band of tissue here, and you can see there's a bit of an edge right here, coming right down here. This band of tissue that hugs the pupil is called the stomach ring. And when we can see an edge to it, it tells us the stomach is not as tough and strong as we'd like it to be. Well, we already know the lining isn't tough and strong. Now the whole stomach isn't tough and strong. And so I want to ask her more about digestion, anything else that causes problems with the stomach itself. And she hasn't noticed anything, but a large part of that might be because she's pretty careful with most of her diet, and she's not drinking coffee, tea, or alcohol. So she's not putting in a lot of stuff that would toughen up the stomach lining. Now, the next thing that I did is I always take lots of photos with lights in different places, and this is why I like my students to have a lighted magnifier and a magnifying glass and a pen light, because you can see that when we go from 2 flashes per eye to 1 flash, we now see all of the layers of contraction furrows that are going all every which way but loose, right? They're all over the place in her eyes. And so we know then that because of this, that she probably spends a fair amount of time in that sympathetic zone. Right, so you really want to do that if you're playing with iridology and you've got your lighted magnifier. Also have that pen light with a separate magnifying glass, and play with moving the light around to see how it makes different features pop. So important. And again, we need to be thinking about sympathetic mode with this girl. She has a very slight lipemic diathesis starting at the top. There's a bit at the bottom, a little bit at the top, and actually if we flip back, the lipemic diathesis shows up a little bit more with just 1 light than it does with 2. You can see it a little bit more clearly here. Tiny bit of it coming in down here, tiny bit of it just starting down there. Again, it's an acquired sign, so it's building with time. So remember that the lipemic diathesis, we remember that from our last case, talks about the liver function, talks a bit about circulatory system, and remember her family history. She's got this 4 generations of cardiovascular stuff going before her. Question is, will that show up with a pen light? You might be hard-pressed to see one that's this light, but from the previous case, you would absolutely see that with a pen light. You may even find that in some cases it is such a pronounced marking, it's built up so much that you can see it without a light. So you'll just have to play with it and see where you see it and where you don't. We were going to talk a bit about her lymphatics. Look at these little dots that are coming down here. These little dots tell us that her lymphatic system, if left to its own design, would choose to not circulate. It would choose to be congested. Thank goodness she's active. That makes her lymphatic system flush properly. We also have here, look at this great big mark here and this one here. These are called rooftop transversals. There's another one here, a little one here. These really suggest a predisposition towards arthritis. Now, she told me that when she turned 40, she said it was almost exactly on her 40th birthday, she woke up one morning and she couldn't move her hands. They were so stiff and sore that she had to put them in hot water and stretch them out, and that went on for a few days. And then she realized that she could take control of this. So she did that on her own without any coaching. She got rid of things that she knew were not good in her diet. She'd been into the sugars pretty heavily. She had been eating a lot of red meat. She'd been doing a lot of dairy. So she cut those things out almost 100%. And within a few weeks, she got full mobility back on her hands. And she's never gone back to being stiff like that again. So the diet has so much to do with it. We see the genetic predisposition in the eyes, but then we have to do things to either make that disposition happen or to keep it from happening. And so she chose to back that bus up and get rid of it. It's important to remember that the irides show us genetic strengths and weaknesses. People may have indicators in their irides and yet have no physical symptoms. They may have a lifestyle that will prevent genetic predispositions from surfacing. That is what we wish for all of our clients. Alternately, people can create problems for which they did not have a genetic predisposition. Eat enough sugar and refined carbs while having a sedentary life, and you'll likely create some kind of blood sugar disorder. And another question. Great example of rooftop transversal. Yeah, really pronounced, huge, huge, frighteningly huge. So my recommendations here were that she needed to start chewing her food better. Those comb teeth, we've really got to help that stomach do its job, so chew the food better. I congratulated her for not drinking coffee or alcohol. Those would be 2 things that would really not be good for her body. We added some digestive enzymes to her, just a general one, because we can have the pancreas and the liver involvement there, so I wanted to make sure we covered off on that a little bit, and to help her with her protein a bit. I added some methylated Bs and some adrenal substance to her as well, because all those contraction furrows and her pupil size in normal lighting is a little bit bigger, and so I knew we needed to do that support too. And remember that the Bs are good for the liver as well. And suggested that she add some relax time, because the relaxing is good for the adrenals and the nervous system. So again, her recommendations, and was I supposed to click through here? No, I wasn't. Were quick, they were easy, they were precise. Things that she could just check, 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 get them done every day, and be good with it, and not have to wonder, have I done that? Did I do it good enough? Oh my goodness, there were 12 things. I only got 9 of them. We wanted her to feel hugely successful so that she could come back and say, yes, I have done this 90% or 80%, and I could say, that is fabulous. Let's move on and build on that foundation. Right? When we give our clients success experiences, they want to come back. We all like that. We all like getting the pat on the back. So again, Confident Nutritionist is open for registration. Even though we call it nutritionist, herbalists get just as much out of this. And again, the purpose of the program is to help catapult you to the next level with your practice and to help you be more confident. It's made up of 20 live webinars, about 2 hours each. You receive, the content is edited into short topics stored on a student site for you to review for 18 months from your start date. The digital textbook is made available in weekly installments. And once you have graduated, I'm constantly tweaking the textbook. So once you've graduated, if a new version comes out, it gets posted to a site that you have access to. So you can always have access to the newest version of the textbook with better photos, clearer descriptions. The purpose here is to support you ongoing as you continue on as an iridologist. Each class starts with a review of the previous week, just like Allison said in her testimonial. Each week has lots of in-class practice and interaction, just like Allison said. And so what's the tuition? It's $19.95 Canadian. Now, if you're in the States, that's going to come out to about 20% less in US dollars, so about $16.50 or so. And that gets processed through your credit card company. Oh, let's look at one more eye. Actually, a couple more, just really quick. You look at an eye like this and you go, well, where do I begin? I've got stuff happening in here. I've got stuff attached to the collarette. I've got lipemic diathesis, and I think there's something going on with blood vessels here. Absolutely. With an eye like this, again, we would start with our basic color, and then we would start from the center and work out. And as you learn the signs, you learn that when we have this many of these petal shapes attached to the collarette, it suggests that this is a person who is prone to blood sugar imbalances and or adrenal imbalances and or other endocrine concerns. The color, the darker color inside those petal shapes tells us that those areas have less energy, they're less reactive, they're going to need a lot more support. We look at things like this little knot of blood vessels. That tells us that we want to watch for kidney issues. And we look at these blood vessels that are following along the edge of the iris. These suggest circulatory congestion. Remember the iris chart we looked at that had the map? This suggests circulatory congestion in the organs that are in the adjacent reaction fields. Right, and so we are going to want to be looking at what those are, and then we are going to want to work with her circulation. Digestion and circulation will be probably the two places we'll want to start with this person, because if she can't circulate the nutrients well enough, it's no good feeding her. Not that we want to starve her to death, of course, but you get the picture. We can feed her the best quality stuff, but if it's not circulating well, she's not getting the benefit of it. So we want to really be working on that. Interesting that the sclera will often show blood vessel activity of problems brewing before those problems become symptomatic. So if we monitor the sclera periodically every 3 or 6 months or every year, we can see changes happening, both improvements and things that are getting worse. When things improve, the blood vessels calm down. When things get worse, they get thicker and more tied up in knots. This is the very dark brown eye of a 10-year-old girl who actually was diagnosed shortly after this picture was taken with an eating disorder, which we strongly suspected. And I actually spoke with her mother privately and said, I did not feel qualified to work with eating disorders in a young child. I could do things with an eating disorder with an adult, but with a young child, I felt that professional care from someone who was trained in that would be a much smarter idea. As we look at this, we can see that that stomach ring has some activity in it. We can see that this collarette is doing some other interesting things. We have a lot of blood vessel activity here, especially for a 10-year-old. And so there's a lot going on in her body, and we need to make sure she's got the right kind of help for that. So there are bonuses. There are bonuses with the class, and the bonuses look like this. In your tuition, I will gift you an IPA student membership. What is IPA? International Iridology Practitioner Association student membership. This gives you access to all the wonderful things that IPA has to offer. I will gift you with the Iridology cheat sheet that includes questions to ask. Now this is, in its final assessment, as I'm constantly tweaking it, is about 40 pages. Cheat sheet is a real understatement. It's a cheat booklet. It's the ultimate crib notes, listing every iris sign, a description of what it looks like, common questions that you would need to ask, common problems that you might see with it, common recommendations for diets and supplements. So it is your crib notes. Keep it in a binder on your desk to look things up quickly. I've had students say this is their favorite thing from the whole class, that they use it constantly. Private Facebook group for confident nutritionist students and alumni. This is where you can post cases and questions and concerns and interesting things that you learn about iridology for us to continue the conversation. Allison says it's a lifesaver, and I think she means the cheat sheet, because I know that she really likes working with the cheat sheet. The private Facebook group is only for my students and only for my alumni. You will never be kicked out. It is for my students and alumni only, and as long as I'm teaching iridology, this Facebook group is there to support you. So it's probably worth more than $247 because you don't even pay a monthly membership fee for it. We have monthly student-driven coaching webinars that we record and post to the website. This has got to be worth at least $500. So every month for about an hour, students have submitted cases, either images of eyes or written case histories or questions, and we get together, we discuss them online, we record that, and it's just a really fabulous way for you to, again, get your deeper questions answered. And Allison says with the private Facebook group that she does find it very supportive, and I'm so glad she does, because that's what it's for. I like to think I attract quality people, because every one of my students has been a quality student and has been a lovely person, and it's just such a nice sandbox to play in with them. You get a certificate of attendance for coming to 80% of the classes online live, but if you have to miss a class, again, every one of your classes will be recorded in full, as well as the topic snippets for you to review as needed. Now, why is this a bonus? Because once you have finished your 40 hours of study, if you want to certify with IPA, part 1 of the exam is 10 iris analyses. Now, if we were doing a class face-to-face, you would be limited to the number of students in the room for who you practiced on and who you did your analyses on. Because we are a virtual class, I provide you with your iris analyses so that you can get those done. Now, it may take you 20 or 30 or 40 hours to do your 10 analyses. It takes me between 5 and 10 hours to mark them. And then you and I meet together for another hour to go over where your strong points are, where you need to beef up a little bit to answer any specific questions you have. This is part 1 of your IPA exam, should you choose to certify. I don't charge you $750. I include this in your tuition as a gift to you, as a bonus. Once we've decided that, yep, you've got this under your belt, then you do your one final case study. This is provided to you from IPA through me. So IPA gives it to me, I give it to you. When you've completed it, you send it back to me. I grade it, and again, we meet and we talk about it. So that's why this is worth about $149, because it's taking my time to market and then time to coach you on it if more coaching is needed. And Allison says, back to these 10 analyses, it's great when you don't have to, having these provided is a great service, because you don't have to go somewhere else to find eyes And if you don't have access to a lot of people, it's nice to have this provided. Thanks, Allison. I'm glad you appreciated that. Last but not least is there is an optional live IPA exam preparation. It's a one-day review that I hold here in Calgary. If you are not one of my students, if you're coming from someone else's classes, it's worth $300, but my students get it for free. And this is a part of, again, how I help you to prepare for the exam. This is, again, student-driven. You bring in questions, you bring in concerns, we go through bits and pieces, whatever you need us to go through to make this happen. And Allison says, yes, she's working on her case study, this one right now. Yes, yes. So we do that, the exam preparation, one for a day, and then the very next day I offer the exam. So I schedule exam days 4 times a year. And whether you're doing an exam or not, if you are in my group, you are welcome to come to the exam prep day as an extra way of getting more coaching and of getting more support for what you are doing. And I just think that is so important. You don't want to function in a bubble. If you come to Calgary for your test, I will supervise your test without charging you a proctoring fee. IPA has very high standards, and in order for them to send out the written exam, you need to actually have your exam proctored. So you send in a form that says, this is the person who will supervise my exam. The exam is sent to that person. That person supervises you writing the exam for 4 hours. That person collects the test and sends it back into IPA. And so if you are hiring someone, you can get a justice of the peace or a notary public to do that. They will typically charge you between $25 and $50 an hour. You can go to a university or college where they have a testing center. They will often supervise outside tests, receive your exam, supervise you, and send it in for you. But they will typically also charge $25 to $50 an hour if you're not a student there. So I will do this for free for you on the exam days as scheduled without charging you a fee because I love you and you are one of my students. So what's the tuition again? It's $19.95. And again, this is most of these courses, when you look online, you'll find lots of iridology courses out there that are less expensive, absolutely, but they're taught face-to-face either as 2 or 3 weekends or as a full 5 or 6 day intensive. So when you've got that, you've got some challenges. I like to teach it over 20 weeks because that gives you time to practice in between. It gives you time to see what you aren't learning. When I go to a 5-day seminar, by day 2.5, my brain is mush. I've stopped learning. I've stopped observing. My bum is getting sore. Oh, did I say that out loud? My hand is getting sore. I don't want to take any more notes. I'm done. But 2 hours once a week, I can totally be there and totally be present and accounted for. When you do 3 weekends, you've got travel for three trips. You've got accommodation. You've got meals. You've got a lot of away from home expenses. You do a 5-day or a 6-day course. If you work full time, if you've got to practice, you've lost that income. So by doing it virtually, 2 hours a week, you don't lose business income. Right? You don't have travel expenses. You might have a travel expense if you want to come and do your exam here in Calgary, but that's all. You're not going to have recurring, ongoing, long expenses. So you might be saying yes to the idea of the class, but you're thinking, I just don't have $19.95 in my back pocket waiting for me to spend it right now. Do you offer a payment plan? The answer is yes. Yes, I do. Payment plan is $549 for 4 payments. So first payment comes out as soon as you go online to register, and it sets you up for a payment a month. Now, my registration process is not fully automated. I'm not quite there yet. Once you've paid and I see the payment is coming through, I get those notifications pretty quick. Within 1 or 2 business days, depending on when that notification comes through, I will send you the full registration form by email. You print it up, fill it in, scan it, send it back. That gives us what we need to do, and I give you full access to whatever materials I can at that point in time before we have even started the class. So you'll be welcomed into the Facebook group instantly, immediately, and there we go. So there is the registration link one more time, iridology.education/5th of October 2017. And Allison says registration is easy peasy. Thank you, Allison. One more testimonial from Karen Choate. She came to me as an already certified natural health practitioner. And she is also getting ready to do her exam. She's on her case study. Having recently completed the Confident Nutritionist program with Judith Cobb, I can honestly say this is one of the most rewarding, informational, and fun classes I have ever had. Judith is a born teacher, meaning she's extremely patient and kind. She keeps things light with a bit of humor, but above all, she's a master at her craft and generously shares her knowledge. Judith is committed to the success of her students. I feel very blessed and fortunate to have had such an amazing teacher and to have been a part of her class. I've already implemented several techniques and applied extremely crucial and beneficial knowledge and skills that I learned in this class to my own practice with great success. Thanks to Judith, I am definitely a much more confident nutritionist. So I thank Karen for that very, very sweet testimonial. So just as some final bits of housekeeping, IPA certification exam costs $175 US. That is payable to IPA, not to me, if and when you are ready to take the test. Some students do not want to certify. They don't need to certify. They just want to have the information. And so for people who don't want to certify, that's fine. We just don't take you through the 10 cases, through the one final case study, or through the written exam, and you don't pay the extra $175 to IPA. But that's okay. It's totally up to you. If you do decide you want to do the exam, we can get you set up to do it. And so with that, again, it's time to get registered. $19.95. Registration will be closing on September 30th to give us time to get all of the paperwork processed before class starts on October 5th. So if you're interested, go ahead and get registered. If you know of someone else who's registered, let them know about this. I'm going to post this recording on YouTube and make it available to everybody so that if you know someone who you think would be interested, they can go and access it and decide for themselves. And with that, I thank you very much for being with me tonight. Allison, that was so much fun to have you on the class. You were my only person, as you could tell.